Hey, what's up everybody, BDF 44 coming at you another video. Alright, so, took a little early sleep. I wouldn't say nap because I actually slept a bunch of hours after the Laker game, and so I'm up now and I'm listening to the second half of Kanye West's interview with Whack 100 on his platform. And I've enjoyed the first half. They've released two different parts of the interview throughout the day, so I was able to see the first half early in the morning yesterday, and then of course now they just released the second half. So it's really interesting. I don't think I'm here to really talk about what he was saying necessarily though, because there's been so much distance between the two parts that I still have more to listen to before I can really sum anything up or anything like that. But it was something that he said specifically that just kind of made my mind turn on the camera. Kanye West was saying he's a new Christian and a new politician. So, you know, he was asked about Obama's tenure in presidency, and he was essentially saying he didn't know then what he knows now. So in order to really look at that, he's only going from a hindsight perspective. At the time, he saw it a certain way and has learned a lot that helped him put things together. And that's, you know, updated information gives us new opinions. That's what I always say on this channel. You know, certain ways of thinking that I just think aren't promoted as common, but should not be that difficult to absorb. New information, that kind of thing, that's not hard. I didn't know what I know now. Now I can look at things differently, and I haven't had the time to do so, to go back and revise what I've learned, matching with what I've seen. So I got to do that in order to come up with an opinion. It's totally okay to say that and to be that way on camera when you don't necessarily have that sorted out. I think that kind of sums up a lot of what is going on with me. I'm just learning as I go along now, and it gives me ways of looking at things that have happened throughout my life. You know, like, dang, that's how that, oh wow. So, and there is a lot of stuff that's been sorted through or what have you. I think listening to him say he was a new Christian, though, what I've found is that in my walk of life, a lot of people who are new in Christianity, what a lot of times they don't absorb about the faith when they're new, a lot of times it's just how, and the word that comes to mind for me is fluid. One's relationship with Christ should be, and what I mean by should is with my relationship with God and how I've walked and how I've learned what works in my life as a Christian person and as a person who's tries to claim himself to be spiritually inclined, so to speak. There's certain things that come along with being a Christian that you understand. You gotta have that understanding of what Christ was about and apply that based on your own love for him, because the religion itself doesn't necessarily teach the thought of allowing for people to just be themselves and not trying to impose that energy on others. Every time I find people who've been just introduced to religion, they apply the religion as if it's supposed to be a dictatorship. Like a lot of religions, a lot of practices, and a lot of things applied. Without Christ, that's the way it goes. You better do it or you face consequences. Like, that's how the world is. If you don't do this, you get that. But the very nature of the Christ himself is that because he lived, you get forgiven for that. That's how it works. So when people apply Christianity to a lot of things, they apply the practice of applied belief. But in this unique situation, that very essence needs to be revamped for the specifics of who it is that you're celebrating. And that part is a disconnect. And I think for a lot of religious people who apply religion or people who teach religion, I personally believe that's deliberately not placed there. Because a lot of times religion is used to keep people in chains, right? The way we learned of Christ as black people in this country, we learned of him through our slavery. So it's really strange. It's a strange conundrum which a lot of things provide us in this world, where it looks a certain way and it can be applied a certain way. And if you dig deep into the essence of what it actually is, you find out the way that those things are applied are actually not the essence of what it is he's about. And that's how it's been perverted to keep people from loving Christ, because they've used his name in a trillion different ways to force people into doing things that were not things that they wanted to do. But the very essence of what the Christ was forgiving you for doing things that you were not supposed to do. Things that you often did in direct response to the authority of you having to do something. Right? The rebellion of such. That rebellion in and of itself by the Christ is understood. That relationship between you and the Christ should make it so that he understands what you're feeling in your innermost when you are faced with those type of things. So that is one of all of the reasons why his sacrifice took place, so that you could be forgiven for that frequency. And so what I'm essentially saying to you, the closer I get to Christ, not necessarily religion, but the closer I get into my innermost as I pray to Christ on my own without the presence of doctrine or anything, just that relationship, the thing that keeps coming to mind is continue to embrace people that don't think or pray like you. Continue to love people who don't think like you. Continue to pray for people who you think are wrong. That doesn't mean you bring those people into your situation and open up your happy home into them, give them everything you have and let them take it from you. It's not the absence of thought or the absence of common sense or the absence of safety that I believe is present when I pray. But it is an understanding that you don't have to be on top of everything, because he is in control of everything, and you have been forgiven for everything before you even do it, so long as you stay close to that relationship with the Christ. And so that's my understanding based on my relationship and, of course, my growing up in this faith. But what I also understand is that the religion itself, by way of Christ's enemies, has been perverted to be something that would repel mankind from the Christ himself. So the way that you got him is supposed to make it look like something you need to stay away from. Like, you got him in chains, so obviously he's not a real God, right? Because he was given to you in a way that's supposed to keep you in line with doing things that are not meant for you. But that's one of the great conundrums of why you got him. You got him in pain because he's valuable and such. So that's the way I equate it. It's like, okay, anything worth having is worth keeping and worth fighting for and worth suffering for, etc. And we got the Christ by way of our suffering. The greatest thing we ever got came from the worst of circumstances. And so that's the way I equate that. It's like, just because we got Christ through hatred and evil does not mean that he was meant to enforce more of such. What he actually was the great blessing for our circumstances. What he was the only good thing that could possibly come out of that. And what he was absolutely enough to make up for all of our suffering. Because if you understand what the Christ is, it's like basically a get out of hell free card. So for your suffering, you receive the Christ. And it's like, so you don't look at it that way. You're taught not to look at it that way. You're absolutely taught not to look at it that way. You're taught to either blindly believe in the Christ to your own detriment, or effectively betray the Christ because of your own skepticism. Either way, it's meant for you not to view it properly. And so as I learn and I grow, I'm like, oh man, look, anything worth having is worth destroying for the enemy. So whatever it is that's righteous, it's going to be looked at, or it's going to be viewed, or it's going to be positioned in certain ways so that you don't want to have nothing to do with it. No matter what it is, if it's worth having, it's going to be entities out there that don't want you to have nothing to do with it. The more valuable it is, the more they'll discredit it. Copy and paste it, anything you can think of. The more valuable it is, the more they try to draw from its importance. And so as I look at that, and I'm like, okay, everything they do with Christ's name, I mean, his own holiday, they take his name out of it. At Christmas, they put Xmas up there. Do you see they do that with any other holiday? You see they do it with Thanksgiving, X-giving, X-ween, Exter, as in Easter? No, they don't do none of that. They do that only for that particular holiday because it has Christ's name in it. If it held no value, why are they so offended by it? And one of the things that they try to do in religion, I believe, is separate people. Separate people. I was looking at something today that disturbed my soul. It was a black woman who, she was, I guess, a caretaker of some Muslim children. And I guess they were in her office doing their religious prayers. And she came in there talking about, I believe in Christ, stepped on their hands, talking about, I don't know why you doing this in here. Why y'all doing all this? I believe in Christ. I don't know what type of voodoo you doing. Let's be very, very clear. I am not drawing from doctrine when I say what I'm about to say. This is not the Christian religion when I speak this way. So if you're following the Christian religion, this is not what I'm about to tell you. In my walk with life and praying to God, praying to Christ, the same Christ I've been talking about for the last 10 minutes, the only thing that comes to mind in regards to the Muslim faith is love them. Love them like they would want you, like you want them to love you. Love them, and that's it. Don't sit up here wondering whether or not your belief is the right belief or that their belief is the right belief. Because if you look around, you're a person and they're a person. You know what that means? Y'all was both born without a playbook or a handbook as to how this thing goes. Meaning, I made you the way I wanted you to be. I made them the way I wanted them to be. And y'all gonna come together when I'm ready for y'all to come together. So until then, you gotta stay in your respective corners and pray the way I told you to. That's what comes to me. I ain't talking about what's in the doctrine. It ain't what's in there. The doctrine I don't know what it says in regards to that. But what I pray about is you supposed to love your brothers that pray like you, and you're supposed to love your brothers that don't. Just the same, it ain't your job to judge them. It's your job to love them. God judges them. God created the Christ for all of us. And so the way I see it is, that's what I got to do. I got to pray for people I don't believe are necessarily in the right energy. Doesn't necessarily mean let them in my house, like I said, or whatever. But you do not shun them just because they believe in something that you were raised to believe differently. Because a lot of times we were raised to believe differently because people were in place who wanted us to be separate, not because God didn't want us to be connected. And that's the point. That is the point. I look at nations all over the world I've never been a part of. And they celebrate, worship, and stay true to the Muslim religion. And from where I'm at and from where I'm sitting, without me actually doing homework, without me actually sitting down with some people, there's literally absolutely no way for me to receive the truth about what it is they got going on, because I live over here, and the way that we're in doctrine is set up a certain way. The way that we're set up as a society is set up a certain way to where it has become ever so clear to me after 38 years that I'm not supposed to even be curious about what's going on in those places. That I've been taught basically to look at them like them as opposed to look at them like us. That by way of religion, I've been separated by way of my agreements from people who are people just like me. I was thinking about something else. It's like, okay, we often look at images. And this is something I don't know enough about, so I wouldn't dare try to advise anybody in regards to this. But it's just my own vibes on things. We look at various art forms and things that we go for, like, stuff that is supposed to be deemed as darkness or wrong images or whatever. And I look at art and I'm like, as an artist, I've even heard Kanye West talk about like 808 basses, and some sounds are directly connected to certain frequencies, and those frequencies are evil and various things. I don't doubt that there's more for me to learn, but what I can say is when I pray about those various things, the only real feeling I get is that as long as I have filtered these things through prayer, I should be able to subject myself to just basically anything that I'm cool with. Anything that I want to subject myself to, I should be able to subject myself to, so long as that relationship with Christ is in place beforehand. And so that's how I walk. So I don't know. Like, I look at the images of skeletons and stuff like that, and it's equated as evil, demonic, like that is supposed to. But the way I look at it is, no, the people who marketed it to me wanted me to see it a certain way. The skeleton and the bones was created by God just like the rest of our body. This is a natural occurrence to be this way and look this way on the inside. And so when we see these things in certain forms, it's like, oh, that's equated to evil, that's death. That's like, no, that's yet another form of the Creator's art. Your skeleton, the way that you look, the way that you are constructed, it's all a part of His creation. And so it's like, when we look at it, it's like, oh, that was made for evil. Oh, those colors, that's a black color. Oh, that's bad. That's a white color. Ooh, that's white. That's nice. Like, no, those are things that is agreements in our head. Those are things that we've allowed to be a part of our society. Not necessarily things that can't be worked around. So as I look at alternate lifestyles and people who live a different way, goth people and people who have their own thing, and I'm like, that's supposed to be equated based on how I was raised as evil. They're engaged in darkness, they're engaged in this type of behavior, until I started actually finding myself in situations where I get to be around certain people and get to feel their energy and realize that is not represented in their energy a lot of time. And I remember going to a goth club with my homegirl Tamika and realizing that I was around people that had solid energy, no different than any other club. Yeah, they engaged in stuff that was a different culture, that in my eyesight was darkness and of course equated to be evil. But the actual evil was in the practices of whoever chose to do whatever wrong. It wasn't necessarily represented in their culture or in the colors they wear or in the stuff that they like to keep around them as their ambiance or what have you. And so as I start to look into certain things, I'm like, spiritual energy. And I start realizing, a lot of times the stuff that we say is supposed to be of the most beautiful energy is actually stuff that causes wars, pain, suffering. People be dying over religion and Christ and all these different things. And I'm like, and then you see stuff like that, or you look at a golf club or whatever, they ain't fighting each other. They're not in there killing each other. I mean, whatever they're doing is agreement, and they walk away at peace, and they're able to gain strength from one another in harmony. And I'm like, I don't know if that's any different than a Bible study. There's just no Bible. You know what I'm saying? Whatever it takes to bring people together to make them feel good and ultimately get them through their lives. I mean, who am I to judge? You know what I'm saying? And most importantly, why am I blanketly looking at the colors they use and the way that they dress and the way that they do things as a means of judging their energy? When I can look over at people who dress beautiful, do all kinds of things and pray like me, and in the name of all of that, they killing people. In the name of all that, they doing all kinds of stuff that ain't right. And so I'm like, I've been taught how to look at certain things. That is not what my energy actually tells me. That's not what I get when I go into my innermost, so to speak. What I get from that is I can create things that look like that too. When I listen to basses with 808 drums, I can pray to God while I'm listening to those sounds. I can write a gospel verse to an 808 beat that they say is low frequency. Like, there's nothing that can't be done when your mind is focused on being free and not agreeing with whatever it is that's been told to you that is not or what it is. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's all about the energy. Are we reading the energy properly or not? This is the conundrum we have with our day. We look at a guy like Kanye West and he says certain words, but the spirit behind the words, are we sure we're reading the spirit properly? Or are we just looking at the words and just saying this is it? I was looking at something I saw this morning. It was a post on Instagram in regards to, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a it was an anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism, I guess you could say. It's pro-Jewish support, I guess. Whatever. I don't know how to phrase it, but that was the Instagram. That was what they were about, and what they were essentially saying. They put up there was like, okay, Kanye West has officially became the anti-Semite of the year, and they made a whole satire about it, and then proceeded to make fun of all of the things that were taken from him in regards to the situation. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, yeah, he did a lot to offend you, for sure. But in the spirit of balance, are we not going to mention what he was actually trying to say? Are we not going to mention that there's some other side of the conversation that needs to be added to it? It's not just somebody who hates Jewish people, but like someone who has legitimate gripes and legitimate complaints, and is trying to show by example of what comes out of his mouth, how the hypocrisy that he believes is shown in him is perceived. So he's essentially showing y'all, like, y'all don't respect our people, you don't respect our culture. You go around promoting the violence and the conflicts that we have within our culture and supporting various things, etc., etc. And then when we turn to you and show you the hypocrisy by doing the very same thing that you do to us, suddenly you're showing us exactly how offensive it is to you. So this is exactly what it is to me. When you run around doing this, and this, it's equivalent to being anti-Semite. being an anti-Semite, running around saying you love Hitler, running around saying, because it's equivalent to it, because you're supporting the annihilation of us by way of the various things that do so, right? So that's all he's doing, and they will not acknowledge that. Instead, they will go by, on their Instagram post and proceed to make fun of what it is that they did to him in response to something that they are only looking at one-sided. So when I look at the energy that they're engaging in versus the energy that they're saying he's engaging in, what I actually see is them behaving the way they're saying he is. And if I'm not to filter that through my own mind, I won't see it that way. And so this is what I've come to just understand. It's like, look, they did the same thing with religion. They've done the same thing with anything good. They do the same thing with a lot of stuff because they're always looking to keep people in line. They're always looking to keep your mind wrapped up into these agreements so that you're not undoing those agreements and ultimately come to terms that they're not only not who they say they are in regards to keeping you close to righteousness, so to speak, because that's not what their intention obviously is, but more so someone who wants to control you so that they can keep you at a distance that makes them feel comfortable and keep you in a space that makes them feel like they can keep control over you going forward as their plans continue. So it's like, look, I'm not in the business of looking at things the way people want me to. I'm in the business of filtering those things through my own spiritual energy and then applying my unique and free thought to it. And as I come around to doing that, the more I do that, the more I realize that a lot of this stuff is in place to make us see things backwards, absolutely and utterly backwards. I'm looking at some of these celebrities that pop up on my Instagram again, looking at just some of these celebrities that they have, the black celebrities that are particularly up there that are meant to make us love wealth and feel at a disadvantage for not having it and want to go through extreme lengths to go get it so that we can find ourselves ultimately falling short and ending up either in prison, dead, or unhappy. That's the only thing that comes with that. They tell you these standards that you cannot reach. They show you people that look like you. They dress them up in the most expensive stuff and then tell you you're not worthy of those things. It's the craziest thing in the world. I'm looking on Shade Room and I'm just seeing this. I guess it was it's Carisha or something. And she was, I don't know, I guess Diddy was having a new child and she's sticking with Diddy because that's what it is. And so my thing is like, all right, cool. That's what's happening. But what is the image actually showing me? It's actually showing every young black woman that if your man has a bunch of money, it really doesn't matter what he does. You're supposed to stay there because the money's worth more than you. Because you can't get a man better than that. And even if you were to try to, why would you try to? Because that's what you should be aiming for. Not happiness, not circumstances where you are involved and it's only you or whatever. None of the things that will ultimately make you feel special, but more so make you feel like you're aligning with what it is their expectations for being special is, which is ultimately going to leave you without a lot of things that ultimately you need in your household to make you happy. And they know that. They want you chasing money so that you will end up empty. Because they know if you're chasing money instead of love, your household ain't going to last. Your family's going to be broken up and you are not going to be together. They know that. So they want you chasing that stuff. And we're effectively doing so. We are pushing each other away by way of class when none of us have any money. They got it all. $8 billion they gave to Ye, they took it from him the same day. Why? Because he pissed them off. You don't have no money. So how can you possibly have money be the thing that makes you important to whom? To the rest of us? No, that's propaganda pushed onto us by way of them showing us examples of us because they know we relate to it. And how do they do it? By telling us that those people are in levels that we can't reach and to feel insecure about it and to do something about it. I'm telling you. That's all I'm seeing as I continue to watch this crap and pray. I'm like, yo, these people want us to hate ourselves and love their wealth. Just like he said. To want to get to places we cannot get to, reach for those things so they can slap our hands. I'm telling you. And so as I look at this, I'm like, that's the real evil. Not the gothic, black, skeleton images and this, all kinds of stuff that you see in Halloween. That ain't real evil. That ain't real evil. Those are types of images that I engaged in when I was 6 years old celebrating Halloween. Candy is related to those images. So, cobwebs and stuff like that. I had good times with those images. I go to church, sit down in the pulpit, see a lady drop the collection plate and scream the F word to the top of her lungs in front of the entire church. In that same church, I seen a guy talking to a camera on national television because he syndicated his channel and his church thing, and he proceeded to curse the entire city for not allowing him to keep the building he was in. He said, I cursed this city for not allowing me to keep this building. It expired and y'all should let me extend and y'all ain't letting me, so everything bad should happen to this city. I was sitting there watching this man curse my city in church because he didn't get what he wanted. So I'm like, man, y'all can't tell me what evil is, bro. I know what evil is. I know what evil is because I have a vibe about myself that allows me to discern what is right and wrong based on compassion and love. And if you ain't applying that compassion and love and balance, then obviously that's where the darkness and the skeletons and the cobwebs and all that Halloween stuff really is. Not enough folks over there that's engaging in energy that makes them feel good and ultimately let them be in fellowship. Christ can be found where the fellowship is found. If people are smiling and being in good energy and engaging in solutions and helping one another and growing the environment from which the children around them are in, if they're being that village, then chances are Christ is present with you. Chances are if you're doing things the right way, you'll be right there. You don't have to know his name. He didn't create you to know his name. That's the point. That's what religion will never tell you. They'll never tell you that. He didn't give you a playbook. He never did. That's like I said earlier in the video. He didn't give us a playbook. If he told you you're Muslim and you're raised Muslim, then you go out as a Muslim person and you love people who don't think and pray like you, and you pray for people who don't think and pray like you. If you're a Christian, I think that's how it goes. If you're not of a spiritual energy, you don't have any spiritual belief, there is no advice that I can give you that won't offend you, because there is real spirituality. You know what I mean? And so for us to pretend that it doesn't exist to appeal to you, or to, not the word appeal, to help you feel comfortable, that's not something that people who are spiritually inclined are going to be able to effectively do. They can lie to you and tell you that they're doing that, but that's not real because they feel something you don't feel. And so I cannot apply any logic or wisdom to that situation because it's lacking something that is very important. But what I can say is you got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do, because there's nothing that a person of faith and of Christ can really tell you that you're going to be able to receive. Not fully, unless you're just open to it. But I think what I've come to believe is that the very nature of not believing leaves you susceptible to what else is there. And in my engagements with life, when I wasn't engaging in spiritual energy, it's exactly what I found myself in. I found myself being used by the wrong energy. I'll say Satan, but it's just ultimately engaging in the wrong energy, coming up the wrong stuff, and ultimately deteriorating from the inside out. That's what I found having no spiritual energy did to me. It made me of the world, made me susceptible to the world, and ultimately put me in a path that left me believing less in the spirituality and believing more in what it is the world had going on. You start I found myself with depression, find myself going toward negative stuff, not disciplining myself away from evil doing, wrongdoings, rather just going towards stuff that ultimately made me feel like I could create the balance. You know, I said this in a video earlier. It was like anytime bad came my way, I wanted to do bad in response to it, and all that came was bad. You know, and anytime it was either I could have some good luck or some bad luck, it just became bad luck inherently. And so it's like, you know, I can't effectively make people who don't believe in God feel better, because my truth doesn't allow for me to do that. It really doesn't. I've tried to do that in this camera, but my truth is that if you have no spiritual energy, then there's more for you to learn and find and seek. That you just, you know, people can't mold the world or mold themselves to meet one another. You just have to be who you are, you know. And when it comes to this spiritual thing, like I said, it don't come with no playbook. But I've seen so many coincidences, and my little pattern matching brain can tell you that a lot of these coincidences don't have no rhyme or reason other than the open air, you know, prayers that go into the sky, and then some type of like fortuitous answering that comes by the way of the clock. It's the proof is in the timing, is what I'll tell people who don't believe in spirituality. The clock is the only DNA I see of spirituality. That's in timing, bro. Everything else is just faith and hindsight afterward. But it's really in the timing. If you wanna know what it is I see there. That's all I can tell people. Just look at the clock, bro. When weird stuff happens, look at the clock. That's where you'll see it. But nevertheless, the truth of the matter is, if you don't feel any spiritual energy, my only real advice is to trust that there is some, and kind of listen to the people who engage in compassion in regards to spirituality. If they engage in evil doings or trying to force feed that information, then they've already started the wrong way. It has to be, as I said, fluid. That's what I can say to people who don't believe in spirituality. Christ would reach out his hand to you and say, my name is Christ, nice to meet you. That's all that's going to happen. Christians and our religion has told us that if you don't believe in Christ, you're going to find the axe. It's the worst in the world. You're going to hell. You're going to burn forever. But the very nature of the Christ is that of compassion. So if you don't know who he is, all he's going to do is just treat you like a stranger. Hey, nice to meet you. That's literally all that is. So that's the biggest misconception that's out there, that your Christ would hate anybody who didn't believe in him first. What kind of stuff is that? You ain't never met me, but you're supposed to worship me? How does that work? It doesn't. It's a lie, and it wouldn't be a good one if people could actually just remove some of the fog from the circumstance. And the fog is just the separation of people, the positioning of human beings, the politics of circumstances for which people won't want to come together even though it makes sense to do so. Some of the people that I pray for on that list are not Christian people. They're not. I don't know if they're religion. For all I know, they might engage in the opposite energy, right? I don't know. But I was told by way of my own walk with Christ that I'm supposed to pray for those people just the same. I'm supposed to allow them their space, that I'm not supposed to look to persecute them because they think differently than me. Why? Because I don't know where they're headed. For all I know, tomorrow may be the day they're convinced. And then from there, they may be on a path that makes them devout. And I might be on a path to where I'm going to lose my faith tomorrow. And guess who's going to be teaching me about the Christ when I forget? I've already seen this in my life. This ain't no hypothetical. I've seen that. So that's why. That's exactly why I say these words to you. Is that your enlightenment in what it is that you believe. You know, some people understand their truth all their life long. Other people search for different religions and place in the world all life long as well, never find it or what have you. They're all born into this world. They all have a last day date. We don't have a book for this thing. We don't know comes with what. So at the end of the day, we're supposed to be the best we can, compassionate to one another. And the example is not in each other, it's in the animals. If you want to know the truth, you see how compassionate an animal is? You see how if you ever watch how they behave around innocence, you ever see how they behave in certain situations, there's good and evil there too. Sometimes animals can be vicious and attack an innocent animal for no reason, just like a human can. Sometimes an animal will go out of its way to save a life, just like a human can. At the end of the day, that compassion, that is the example of right and wrong. It's not in the doctrines of human beings who look to more or less influence that by way of their own ambition, but stripped down, innocent of all that, lacking the thought and all of that, just innocence and energy in animals that tend to show us by way of example what right and wrong actually is. Because they know it and they don't have those thoughts. They know it and they don't have those agreements. They know it and they're not reading what you're reading or watching what you're watching. They just know something's hurt, something needs to be fed, something needs compassion, something needs comforting, whatever it is. And sometimes they're more keen on that than we will ever be, which allows us to understand the fullness of our own ignorance as it pertains to those things. The fullness of it. Because if they understand that stuff without anything, and some of us are still struggling with that when we have all of this, then that should let us know how far we are from where we actually need to be. And so as I embrace that ignorance, I also understand it to be more needed in regards to adding to my truth. If my truth has but this much, by those examples, I still have more to learn, more to grow, more levels of compassion and love to reach. So therefore, for me to assume that I've reached the highest level, regardless of where I'm at, regardless of what human being I find myself being, is a dereliction of what it is that we're ultimately doing, because there's still more levels to reach. There's still more heights to go. And that is what they don't necessarily teach us is that there's more love to gain, there's more love to understand, there's more compassion, more context to seek in regards to the people around us. If you are a certain religion and you're taught that only your religion is the only way to go, then guess what? You are missing out on a lot of love, because there are people out there who don't pray like you, who are praying for you. And that is the truth. That's the absolute truth. I'm one of them. So that's what I'm here to tell you, man. Don't let people tell you that Christ doesn't love you because you haven't learned how to love Christ. That is not how that works. That is essentially what I'm here to tell you. That is not how that works. If you don't know him, he ain't going to throw a stone at your head. He's going to reach out his hand. He's going to shake it. And he's going to introduce himself like a humble human being. That's what the Christ is about. He loves you. And he got all the power in the world. He got all the power in the world, so you don't have to be insecure about it. That's the beauty of the relationship I have with that energy. And I don't have to, like, Christ, is it okay if I do that? And it ain't that type of energy, bro. It's fluid, because he already know what I'm thinking before I think it. He already know what I'm feeling before I feel it. He was able to provide that comfort as those feelings approach. The closer I get to him, that religion and that relationship, the closer I engage in that relationship, the easier it is for me to overcome harsh feelings. I lost a good friend yesterday. A good friend I knew when I was a child. I hadn't seen her in a long time, but people still matter to you. You know what I'm saying? And as I was thinking about her energy and thinking about what, how the times went and all of that, I just think, man, like, it's hard for me to mourn in sadness and agony over my friend because of the energy she engaged in, just like my mother. Happy human beings, bubbly human beings, people who were filled with the Spirit of Christ. When they leave the world and you know who they were and you know who Christ is, you don't mourn the same way, because you know they're going to a place where he's at. I was thinking about, I don't know what took my friend's life. I don't know. I have no idea why she's not with us anymore. But what came to mind when I prayed about it is, whatever the event was, she got through it. She's on the other side of it. The pain is no more. The suffering is no more. All of that. And I just think about it's like, I don't know if she believed in Christ. I lost touch with her when I was a child, but the energy she engaged in, the energy that she and her mother engaged when we see them, how happy she smiled, how much she made us feel good around her, that's love. If she didn't necessarily know Christ, she know him now. You see what I'm saying? She know him now because she engaged in the right energy, and he would have been happy to meet her. So it's like, because I know him, I can tell you guys, there's been a million people over the span of 1 trillion years who have lied to us about who Christ is. But honestly, he's just a really, really nice stranger for a lot of us. And for those of us who do know him, he's our very best friend. And that's why he allows us to have the confidence to love him in the presence of great adversity. While everybody's saying Christ don't exist, oh, he's corny, oh, da 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 da. People like myself have lived in a world where all of that has been applied to him, and he's still able to override it just from the sheer compassionate love of having a real relationship with Christ. Not one that's been given to me by way of being forced. No, I rejected that. I found him when I was looking for him. And he reached out his hand, he shook it, and we've been friends ever since. My name is BDF 44. I thank you all for watching.